vagabonds, come all you don't belongs, winners and losers, come people like me. Come all you travelers, tired from the journey, come wait a while, stay a while, welcome you'll be. Come all you questioners, looking for answers and searching for reasons and sense in it all. Come all you fallen and come all you broken, find strength for your body and food for your soul. Come to the feast, there is room at the table. Come, let us meet in this place with the King of all kindness who welcomes us in with the wonder of love and the power of grace. The wonder of love and the power of grace. Those who worry about houses and money, and all those who don't have a care in the world. From every station and orientation, the helpless, the hopeless, the young and the old. Come to the feast, there is room at the table. Come, let us meet in this place with the King of all kindness who welcomes us in with the wonder of love and the power of grace. The wonder of love and the power of grace. Believers and dreamers and schemers, and come all you restless just searching for home. Movers and shakers and givers and takers, the happy, the sad, the lost and alone. Come self-sufficient with wearied ambition, and come those who feel at the end of the road. And religion haters, accusers, abusers, heard and ignored. Come to the feast, there is room at the table. Come, let us meet in this place with the King of all kindness who welcomes us in with the wonder of love and the power of grace. Come to the feast, there is room at the table. Come, let us meet in this place with the King of all kindness who welcomes us in with the wonder of love and the power of grace. The wonder of love and the power of grace. The wonder of love and the power of grace.
Right, welcome to you. Good to see you here this afternoon for our relaunch. And those of you joining online as well, nice to have you with us wherever you may be. And some of you I know kind of tune in afterwards. And if that's you, then we've missed you here this afternoon, but I hope you enjoy sharing with us briefly in this time now. We kind of punctuate the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, with an opportunity really just to just provide a chance for us to reflect a little bit on life. We call it ReLaunch because most of us regularly just need to do exactly that, just start out all over again. And that can be true on a day, it can be true through the week, that the first part of the week's just not gone to plan and just want to start all over again. And that's at the heart of the Bible's messages, that we get the opportunity in Jesus Christ to start all over again. And the guy that we're following through this month, Samson, we'll put him on the screen for you so that you are reminded of the guy, the story of Samson. Pretty much everyone anywhere has heard of this guy Samson, and they know that he's a kind of strong man. But he is a really good illustration of why it is that no matter who we are, we do just need to relaunch. Samson, we get told quite a bit about him. He had a good family, a good mum and dad, and so he had a lot of advantages growing up in life. He had a mum and dad who loved the Lord and who kind of made sure that he'd have gone to Sunday school and things like that. So he was kind of well brought up, and he had a good background that way. And on top of that, he also clearly had a pretty astonishing experience of God meeting with him and God pouring out his Spirit upon him and giving to him strength that was way beyond his own. So he had not only a good Christian background, as it were, but he also had a pretty powerful experience of God in his life. And there's a guy you'd have thought, well, that's surely enough. And yet this is a guy about whom we read he again and again needed simply to relaunch. We're going to read a little bit more of his story today, and this time it's in the book of Judges chapter 16, and we start off in verse 1 of chapter 16, and we read this. One day Samson went to Gaza where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. Now, I've put 3 errors on the screen there because if you were here with us last week or tuned in last week, or even if you know the story of Samson, then you'll realize that this guy was just regularly getting it wrong. He would blow it in one way and another, and here again, in the space of a single verse, there are 3 more errors that he is making. In some ways, it's the kind of same errors. Where he went, Gaza, that's a Philistine city. If you're a person from Israel, you don't really go to the land of the Philistines. They're the enemy. They don't believe in God. They have all sorts of different gods, and you're not meant really to associate with them. But for Samson, that's out the window. He doesn't bother at all, and so he's going to the wrong sort of places. That's the first thing. That can be true of ourselves as well. We sometimes, for all sorts of reasons, we can kind of go to the wrong places. Sometimes that's kind of geographic. We go to the wrong places. Sometimes it's, the places you go on the television, the programs that you watch, that's another sort of place that you're going. Sometimes you just kind of feel, well, no one else is aware. You just tune in on your own, and you'll go to places there that really aren't clever places to go, and you maybe watch some programs that are not that clever sort of programs to be watching. And that's Samson. He goes to the wrong place. Secondly, who he saw, inverted commas. It wasn't that he was kind of looking at a distance. This was a lustfulness on the part of this guy and the sort of people that he was associating with. And you'll be aware, as well as I am, that sometimes the people that we keep company with, they have an effect upon us, they have an influence on us, and there's good company, there's bad company, and Samson didn't seem to draw any sort of line between the two. He was just quite happy to go anywhere and be with anyone as long as he kind of fancied them. And so there's error number 2, not just where he went, but who he saw, and thirdly, what he did. He went in to spend the night with her. That's putting it politely, of course, because, this is not 9 o'clock at night yet, so we can't cross that threshold. That's just putting it very politely. That is not a good thing for him to be doing. That's not a good thing for anyone to be doing, but that's what he does. And Samson, if you are tuned into the story, you're thinking, that's kind of deja vu. I've kind of seen that before about Samson, and that's very much the theme that I want us to think around today. Just this kind of deja vu, which obviously is French. We try and educate you in all sorts of different languages here. And French meaning I've already seen that. Surely, have I not read that already in the story? And the answer is yes, you have, because this was a regular failing on the part of Samson. Again and again and again. That's just the pattern of his life. And the story goes on. He goes in to spend the night with this prostitute. And then verse 2, we read, the people of Gaza were told, Samson is here. Samson's the kind of enemy. So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn we'll kill him. But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. And then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with the 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders, carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. So they try and use this opportunity to get a hold of him. They've now got Samson, who they know is a strong guy, who's already messed with them a little bit and caused a load of trouble for them in the Philistine country. And they think this is a good opportunity for us now to get our own back, to get a hold of the guy and get rid of him once and for all. And so they think, right, we've got him. We'll shut the city gates and everything like that. Samson just gets up in the middle of the night, and gates like that are no problem to him. He's a strong guy, lifts them up, tosses them around, and he's free. And so far as Samson is concerned, we have to change the language here from French to Scottish, and that's his line. It's Nebora. Nebora at all. It's no problem at all for him to remove the city gates. So he's thinking, yeah, you can try and keep me in, you can try and capture me like that, but it's not going to work because, hey, I'm Samson, I'm strong, and there's not a problem that you throw in my direction that I can't face and I can't handle. And then at verse 4, we read this. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, that's Philistine country again, whose name was Delilah. And so we move now back from the Scottish, Nebora, to the Welsh. And you think, Welsh? Well, it's sort of Philistine, sort of Welsh, because it's Tom Jones, you know the song? My, Delilah. I'm not going to sing it for you, but that's kind of Tom Jones and booming it out with your heart. That's into the Welsh there. And he just sees this lady, Delilah, and he thinks, wow, I've never seen a woman like that at all in my life. I want her. And he just falls in love. Poor guy, he's falling in love with X, Y, and Z all over the place. We came across that, chapter 14. He sees a girl and immediately he's thinking, I want to marry the girl. And now he's seen another girl down in Gaza, down in the valley of Sorek, and thinks, yeah, this is the girl for me. I've fallen in love, head over heels in love. His mum really should have brought him aside and, taken him aside and said, Samson, grow up. But no, he's a full-grown man and he's still falling in love like that. Happened in February, obviously. It's just falling in love like that. February the 14th just happened 2 days back. If you missed it, you've got about 364 days to get your act together for next year, I suppose. But that's Samson. And so he falls in love with Delilah, and she kind of is paid a lot of money by the folk in Philistia. They pay her a small fortune, really to get her to learn from Samson what is the secret of his strength. And Samson is kind of astute enough not to tell what the secret of his strength is. And so he kind of fobs her off to start with and says, well, he says, if you kind of get 7 dried bowstrings and tie me up with them, then that'll do the job. And so she thinks, right, 7 dried bowstrings. And so she gets the 7 dry bowstrings and ties him up like that. And then says, Samson, the Philistines are here. And he just bursts out. And so she realizes that's not actually the secret at all. So she said, come on, Samson, you've got to tell me, what's the real secret? Because that's not the secret. And then he says, well, you get some new ropes. Tie me up with some kind of new ropes. Then that's really what will be able to hold me down. So she does that. And then she says, the Philistines are here. And he just breaks the ropes apart. And she says, come on, Samson, you're not telling me. And then he says, if you braid my hair with 7 braids of hair like that and tie them to the shaft here, that'll capture me. And he's beginning just to let it in on the secret, because the secret, of course, is that he's never had his hair cut. And that's because a vow has been taken from before he was born that he would be raised as one who would be dedicated to God, as he'll explain in a moment or two. And he's beginning to let on. And so he tries that one. And that doesn't prove to be the secret of his strength as well. And so she just kind of nags him a little bit further. Verse 15, we read this about him. Delilah says to him, she said to him, how can you say, I mean, you got to kind of imagine this, a kind of whiny, loving voice from the part of this lady. She's saying, Samson, come on, please, how can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the third time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. And with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Now, if you're a kind of lady, that's one good way of going about it, I suppose. Just nag and nag and nag and nag and nag. Eventually, the guy just becomes sick to death and says, okay, here's what you're looking for. Just give me a bit of peace type of thing. And it worked. Worked with Samson anyway. He was nagged so much that he said, okay, he said, I'll tell you. And he does so. He explains to her, verse 17, he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head was shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. So he spills the beans. And the beans that he spills highlights these two important truths. That here he is a man who is dedicated to God, but when the kind of key to his being dedicated to God is no longer there, then he's as weak as any other man. And that's really what he is pointing to. That's really what he is recognizing and what he is confessing. And she eventually, therefore, sees through that. And he's told her, and as the story goes on, when Delilah saw that he told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, come back once more. He has told me everything. So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands, and after putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so she began to subdue him, and his strength left him. And then she called Samson. Philistines are upon you. He woke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he didn't know that the Lord had left him. The Lord had left him because he'd left the Lord. That's really what is going on. He had ceased to be honoring the Lord at all, had just kind of presumed that he was strong and he'd always be strong, and he'd begun to think that it was his own strength. That's why he was able to handle all these different situations. That's why he was able to lift gateposts off, because, hey, I'm a strong guy. And he hadn't really appreciated fully that the only way in which he was strong was by the grace of God. And that was his undoing. And it was again and again and again the pattern of his life. He just fell into this sort of scenario that he would go to the wrong places, he'd see the wrong people, he'd do the wrong things, and he got away with it for long enough. But eventually it caught up with him. And that's what the Bible calls besetting sin. Those sort of flaws in our makeup, and we all have fault lines in our makeup. They're different for different people, but we all have particular areas, particular issues where we are always coming a cropper. And unless they're handled well, they become our downfall. So we move on to the next slide. I want just to highlight in Samson's life, there were those 3 errors with which we started. And I want really just in conclusion to round it off by pointing to you the 3 lessons for us to learn, no matter who we are, no matter what age we are, the 3 lessons. Number 1 is to recognize your own weakness and perhaps recognize your own weaknesses. Don't be afraid of them. Don't bury them. Don't hide them. Don't pretend they're not there. Don't excuse them. Just recognize that's a character flaw. That's an area of weakness. So don't minimize them, but recognize them. Now, I can't do that for you. You know yourself, and just under God, recognize what those are. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 from the story of Samson is learn to rely on the grace of God rather than to presume on the grace of God. That was Samson's problem. He just kind of presumed that, hey, I can do what I like and God will be good to me. God will look after me. God will help me. And he was careless in his reliance on the Lord. He just presumed on the grace of God rather than recognizing that grace of God was tied in with his relationship with the living God. and we learn to rely on the Lord rather than presume on his grace. And the third important lesson, I suppose, is this. Make sure you read to the end of the story. This was kind of Samson's downfall, but it's not the end of the story. And when you have got it all wrong, and when you have fallen again and again for the same flaw in your makeup, and reach a point where you think, it's curtains for me. There's no future, no hope, because I've blown it so many times. I've made such a mess. Then you need to read on. That's not the end of Samson's story. You're going to have to come back next week for the conclusion of Samson's story, and you'll see that he did more damage for the kingdom of God at the end of the story than all the exploits that he'd done previously, because he'd learned his lesson. And God can pick us up even when we've blown it, and is able to use us again. So recognize your weaknesses. Rely on God's grace. Say, Lord, in this regard, I need your help. That just may be your temper, for instance. You may have a bad temper. You may just explode and erupt and boom, you've caused all sorts of havoc and all sorts of harm. Recognize that and ask the Lord to help you. Beg the Lord, help me in this. And read on to the end of the story, see the ways in which God is able to use you. Let's take a moment then to pray. Living God, thank you for the record that you give of guys like this in the Bible. That's an encouragement to us, even although the guy makes a mess of things, even although he's so very human. It's in some ways, Father, it's just because he's so very human that we're able to relate to him. And we want to thank you that you are pleased to take people like us with all our rough edges, with all our fault lines, and you're able to do extraordinary things with the most ordinary individuals. That you make us strong where we're weak. You help us when we are helpless. You give us peace in the midst of our turmoil. You are the one upon whom we rely, to whom we look, and in whom we trust. Would you help us then as we launch out again into the rest of today, into the rest of the week? Would you help us to draw on your strength? Would you help us to recognize what our weaknesses are, to be able to learn from yourself how to handle them in your strength? And may our lives be lived to your praise and glory. And this we ask for Jesus' sake. Amen. Good. Well, as I say, come back next week and you'll get the kind of end of the story. And we'll kind of play you out with a song that speaks about the Lord breaking every chain that otherwise just drags us down in our lives.